What happens when one of America's most beloved country icons walks onto a talk show expecting a friendly conversation, and instead finds herself defending her roots, her values, and her dignity in front of millions? That's exactly what unfolded on The View when Reba McEntire, the queen of country herself, found her calm Southern charm tested like never before. It began like any other interview. The hosts were smiling, the audience was clapping, and Reba's signature warmth filled the studio. But beneath the surface, tension was brewing. Joy Behar, known for her sharp tongue and unapologetic opinions, shifted the conversation from music to something far more personal, a question about old-fashioned Southern beliefs that struck a nerve. At first, Reba tried to laugh it off, keeping that familiar twinkle in her eye. Yet when Joy pushed further, suggesting that the South needs to catch up with modern America, the tone of the room changed instantly. Reba's expression hardened. The air grew thick with silence. What came next was a rare moment of live television honesty, raw, emotional, and utterly unfiltered. Reba leaned forward, her voice steady but filled with conviction, and fired back with a line that would echo across social media within hours. "You can make fun of where I come from all you want," she said, "but don't confuse kindness with weakness. The South taught me respect. Maybe that's something this show could use a little more of." The crowd erupted. The hosts froze, and for the first time in a long while, The View went completely still. What followed would become one of the most talked-about walk-offs in daytime television history, a moment that proved even live TV has its breaking point. The morning began like any other at The View. The set gleamed under bright studio lights, the audience buzzing with excitement as Reba McEntire made her entrance. Dressed in a soft denim jacket and that trademark smile, she waved to the crowd, carrying herself with the warmth and humility fans had come to love. It was meant to be a lighthearted segment, a talk about her latest tour, her love for country music, and her deep connection to her fans. For the first few minutes, everything seemed perfect. Joy Behar and the co-hosts laughed with Reba, swapping stories about life on the road and growing up in small-town America. But as the laughter faded, Joy leaned forward with that familiar tone, part curiosity, part challenge. She asked about the old-fashioned values Reba often mentioned in her interviews. Her phrasing was sharp, her delivery slightly mocking. Reba's expression faltered for just a moment, her eyes narrowing slightly before she answered with quiet grace. "Well, Joy, I was raised to believe in hard work, faith, and treating folks right. Those things don't go out of style where I'm from." The audience clapped softly, sensing the shift. Joy smirked and replied, "Maybe the South could use a little modern thinking, too." The smile on Reba's face froze. For the first time, her warmth turned into something else. Resolve. The storm was coming, and everyone in that studio could feel it. Joy Behar wasn't finished. She pressed further, her tone growing bolder. "You talk about the South with so much pride, Reba," she said, leaning in. "But don't you think some of those Southern values can hold people back?" "Times are changing." The studio fell quiet. Reba paused, her hands folded neatly in her lap. Behind the polite smile, her composure was cracking, not from anger, but from a deep sense of hurt. She had faced critics before, but something about Joy's tone felt personal, dismissive, and cold. Reba finally spoke, her voice calm but firm. "Where I come from, we don't measure progress by how loud we talk or how clever we sound. We measure it by heart, by loyalty, and by respect. And I'm proud of that." A few people in the audience clapped. Others shifted uncomfortably. Joy gave a light laugh. "That's sweet," she said. "But the world's a little bigger than Tennessee." Reba's eyes locked onto hers. "And maybe that's the problem," she replied softly. "A lot of folks think bigger means better, but some of us still believe in what's right, even when it's small town." The energy in the room changed. What had started as an interview now felt like a standoff. Cameras zoomed in, capturing the flicker in Reba's eyes, the exact moment when Southern charm gave way to righteous fire. Joy folded her arms, clearly irritated. "Reba, you're taking this too seriously," she said, half smiling. "We're just having a conversation." Reba leaned slightly forward. Then maybe the conversation needs more listening and less judging, she shot back, her voice low but unwavering. The audience gasped, a sound that rippled across the studio like a wave. Joy tried to regain control. I'm not judging you, I'm just saying... But Reba didn't let her finish. Her voice rose not in anger but in conviction. No, Joy, you're saying the South is behind. You're saying the people I love are stuck in the past. Well, maybe you should come down and see how much heart lives there before you start throwing words around. The crowd erupted, half in applause, half in shock. Joy's expression hardened, caught off guard by the intensity of Reba's tone. For a long second, no one spoke. The air was electric, the tension thick enough to stop time. The co-hosts exchanged nervous glances, unsure whether to intervene. Finally, Joy muttered, "Well, bless your heart," trying to laugh it off. Reba stared at her, calm and unflinching. "That's what we say," she replied, "when someone doesn't understand respect." The studio went silent. It was clear. The line had been crossed and there was no turning back. The moment hung in the air like thunder before lightning. The producers' faces turned pale behind the cameras. Joy tried to steer the conversation away, fumbling for words, but Reba wasn't interested in smoothing it over anymore. "I came here to talk about music," she said, removing her microphone clip. "But it feels like some folks would rather talk down to me instead." The audience gasped as Reba stood up, her voice steady but filled with emotion. "I've spent 40 years singing about real people who don't get their stories told on shows like this. And I won't sit here and let anyone make them the punchline." Joy reached out, trying to diffuse the moment, but Reba shook her head gently. "You can keep your jokes, Joy. I'll keep my pride." With that, she turned toward the exit. The crowd began to clap, slowly at first, then louder. Even some of the co-hosts looked stunned, unsure what to say. The director signaled for a commercial break, but the cameras were still rolling, capturing every second. Reba walked off the stage, her heels echoing across the studio floor. For a brief moment before the screen cut to black, Joy Behar sat in silence. The talk show that prided itself on being unfiltered had just witnessed what true honesty looked like. When the view returned from break, Joy tried to smile through the tension, but the mood had shifted completely. The co-hosts scrambled to keep things light, joking awkwardly about live TV moments, yet the audience could sense it. Something real had just happened. Within hours, the clip spread like wildfire. Social media lit up with headlines. Reba walks out on the View. Reba stands up for the South. Country star puts Joy Behar in her place. Fans across America flooded the comments, praising her for her grace, her strength, and her refusal to be belittled. Even critics who rarely agreed with Reba admitted that her composure was remarkable. She hadn't shouted. She hadn't insulted anyone. She had simply stood up, calmly, firmly, and with the dignity that defines true character. News anchors debated the moment on primetime television. Some called it a clash of cultures. Others called it a wake-up call for media bias. But for Reba's fans, it was something deeper, a reminder that pride in where you come from isn't something to apologize for. By the next morning, her team released a brief statement. Reba believes in respect, both giving it and expecting it. Yesterday was no different. The story closed not with outrage, but with respect, for a woman who refused to compromise who she was. And for millions watching, it was more than entertainment. It was a moment of truth. Moments like this remind us why people still tune in to live television. Because no script, no edit, and no spin can hide the truth when it finally breaks through. Reba McEntire didn't just defend herself that day. She defended everyone who's ever been talked down to, laughed at, or misunderstood for standing by their values. Her strength on that stage wasn't about pride. It was about respect. And that's something this world could use a little more of. If you believe Reba did the right thing by standing up for herself and for the South, hit that like button and let your voice be heard. Drop a comment below. Do you think Joy Behar crossed the line, or was this simply a clash of personalities live on air? And if you want more real, unfiltered moments like this, raw emotion, truth, and courage on live television, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next deep dive. Every week, we bring you the moments that the networks try to move past, stories that prove authenticity still matters. Your support keeps this truth-telling alive.